Shh.
Well, hopefully, again, we've had music to kick off the podcast. All good. Nicholas is already cracking into the beer. Looks like me and Bruce are on the wagon again tonight. I'm
Yes.
having a cup of Yorkshire tea, actually, which is going down very nicely.
I could have a drink tonight because I'm at work tomorrow, but
Oh. Well, it's raining again in Staffordshire. Apparently, we've got a yellow rain warning for this evening. It was almost nice for about half the day, but it's gone. Anyway, here we are, episode 60. Would you believe another milestone reached in the Malt Travel podcast journey? And we are steady. You know, numbers have been steady. I think the Weatherspoons one is still probably one of our records. I think it beat Nick's logos and labels very early on. So that's
not on YouTube.
Not on YouTube. So we're doing very well. So it's the 16th of July. So it's been a bit of an epic weekend, hasn't it, gents? This is the Monday night that we're gathering. So we've had a weekend of Wimbledon. We had a weekend of the wonderful football and people from Spain showing us how to play and us losing and lots of beer. Actually, probably saved quite a lot of beer. I heard today that apparently the Euros have brought something like £1 billion into pubs and clubs up and down the nation, so it's not been all bad.
No, you have to say, for I know they got beat, but because it continued, the money. We have a pub up the road from us, a big, like a state type pub, and they had a big screen in the garden, and there were 500 people alone in the beer garden. So the boost to beer sales must have been phenomenal, really.
I couldn't understand why they decided to say, pubs can stop open at 2 hours last night. I mean, on a Sunday night.
In case they won.
Yeah, in case they won.
Yeah, but even if they had money, I would imagine that not a lot of people went to work today.
Well,
seems crazy, really.
But then a lot of people.
The most important thing is to get the economy started going. No, I'll give them 2 hours extra in the pub and let them all.
Well, a lot of people also were given the day off as well, or given the morning off. There were schools around us that said you'd have to come in till 10 o'clock. So there we go. Yeah, I mean, the pubs around us.
Why kids don't go to sleep till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning anyway because they're on the bloody phones or the tablets.
Right. Yes. Okay. And the parented podcast will follow this one. I don't particularly like going to a pub to watch football because you just get, especially when they lose. I stopped going whenever we got kicked out in penalties. But I must admit, the pubs near us in town, they were saying at 6 o'clock yesterday they're already full, so don't bother coming because we're already full. So it was obviously a good Sunday night for them, and I guess on most Sundays, most pubs in Newcastle under Lyme would have about 10 people in. So I imagine they took probably £6,000, £8,000 over the bar yesterday, which was very good. Anyway, there we are. So
it's really tidied them on, yes. And if they had played Harry Kane from the start, I suspect they'd have probably won. They were playing with 10 men while he was up front, weren't they?
Play with 10 men. Anyway, we won't go into football. There are other podcasts that have spent the last 40 hours doing that. We also, of course, had Mr. Trump in between his Bud Lights being attempted assassination. The more I watch it, though, the more we better not go down there, but the more I watch it, it just doesn't feel right. I mean, I know they've got this picture with him with the ketchup sachet in his top pocket. Anyway, we'll see where that falls out. Actually, I had quite a nice weekend because it's the Ironbridge Brass Band Festival. So we were down in Ironbridge yesterday. It's actually a 2-day thing. We only play, and there's loads of bands, but you get about half an hour. So it's always quite it's a fantastic venue. And I've got to say, it must be the best beer wagon I've ever come across. So we went last year as well, and it was the same guys there. I don't know who they are. There's somebody based in the Black Country, but they have a very nice, bubby on a trailer. But they have probably about 9 hand pumps. And yesterday they had a selection of Ludlow, Hobson's, and Wye Valley. It's not bad. It was about £5 a pint. They also do lagers and ciders. And actually they were selling out, which is good sign as well. So unfortunately they sold out a butty back because I was probably going to have one of those. They'd sold out of the Wye Valley HPA. So anyway, I managed Hobson's Twisted Spire, which is very, very nice. So that was good. So episode 60. as we mentioned in episode 59, we've had quite a month actually of visiting breweries between us. So what we do is, after our normal catch up and beery news and a quick adventures, is talk a little bit about the breweries which we've been to, which we've listened to, and with the grand finale being Bruce and my visit to Sam Smith's Tadcaster Brewery, which we're probably going to spread over to episode 61 as well, because there was so much to see and talk about. So we will come to that. I think just perhaps just a few. We haven't done this for a while, but I listened back to episode 59, part 1 and part 2, and again today's podcast will follow a similar format in that we'll do about 35 minutes, then we'll have a quick break, and then we'll come back and there'll be a part 2. So for those of you on YouTube, those of you on podcast, the podcast it should just normally carry straight on to part 2. With it might do that in YouTube, it may not anyway. So just a few things just to clear up. I think I did mention last time, spoke about the reason for doing part 1 and part 2 is because probably now it must be probably one of the most popular pubby beery podcasts. Now they've all kind of stopped. The Moon Underwater, which began with I always forget his name now. It was Ellis Johns and the other bloke, and was taken over about a year ago now. Robbie Knox was the long-haired tash bloke that I could remember that Nick was taking the piss out of me last week. So Robbie Knox, he's a comedian, I understand. And the other guy, actually, it's not the sidekick in Taskmaster. It's actually the producer, Dan Trelfer, is the other host of The Moon Underwater. Which again, it's I don't know. To be honest, I've just looked again now, and I don't know anybody who's on. I don't know how the guests are who are on it. I must be getting old. There's a lot of that kind of. I would call them the Edinburgh Fringe. So in fact, they all talk about Edinburgh Fringe. So they're all that kind of comedian alternatives thing. I was looking forward. John Cooper Clarke was on a bit ago, and I guess he's a bit Marmite as well, isn't he? He's a Liverpudlian poet, isn't he? Kind of punk poet. But the first thing he said, he didn't like pubs. He didn't go to pubs himself. So like, well, why have you brought him on? A podcast all about producing the perfect pub. Anyway, the one, if you were going to pick
interesting enough, actually, in today.
Go on, Bruce. You're going to say something? Has it gone?
I was going to say, in today's Daily Mail, there's a really interesting full-page article about Taskmaster, and it's now sold to something like about 60 countries around the world. It's making Channel 4 and Alex Horne and Greg Davis absolute fortunes. It's been turned into a show, and with all the different translations were there. It's phenomenal export now. Insane for such a weird little program, isn't it? Really, I find it quite.
It's an easy concept, isn't it? You know, it's just coming up with the tasks, and then, like you say, anybody can copy and replicate them.
Because you have to buy the rights to it. That's the thing, and it's making Channel 4 an absolute fortune. Bet that company originally came up with the concept and missed it really. But Alex Horns was a brains for all. He's raking in millions. Him and Greg Davies from it. Yeah,
right.
It's quite a really interesting read. Yeah.
So anyway, if you do want to listen to Moon in the Water, you get it on all good podcasts. I think if you were going to listen to one, the concept is you go in, you talk about pubs, and then you build your pub. So you get your choice of draft, choice of spirits, choice of bottles. You have a wild card. You can choose anything you want. They kind of try to make it really Hitman by the ring a bell every now and then. You get to drink whatever you ask for. And it's anyway. There's a guy called Prime Mutton. I don't know if you guys have come across Prime Mutton. He's on YouTube.
I have, but yes, I've come across him on YouTube.
Yes,
he was out.
He's a very well-spoken chap, a little bit eccentric. He's basically a professional bridge player, but on the sideline, what he does is when he goes around the world, he visits anywhere that sells Guinness. So he does a bit bend on a theme we're on about. He looks for the best Guinness, and he's quite a good laugh really, because he's very knowledgeable about all things beery and pubs around the world. So that's that one. We mentioned the sale last week of Meantime Brewery, and I think Nicholas, you were just saying, are you sure Dark Star is part of the Asahi group? Well, just copied it up. They are a member of the Asahi group, and as you mentioned now, all Meantime beers and Dark Star beers are now being brewed at the Fuller's Brewery in Chiswick. So again, as you know, it feels like there's another story coming in a minute. There's a bit of stealthing going on here. So that's just to clarify that Dark Star are part of that. And then we also talked about London's smallest pub. So Nick, I think you'd put forward the Crown and Cask. Now, according to the London beer, whatever Bible I was reading,
Central London, they reckon.
Yeah, it's the 5th one It's the fifth actually, which is it's the fifth smallest pub. If that does that make sense? And they reckon that the smallest pub is the Dove, which in Hammersmith, London, the smallest area of any bar at 4 foot 2 inches by 7 feet. I think that is actually the bar that they measured there, but just look a very, very small one. And of course, one we'd all forgotten, and I know, have you guys been in there yet? One of my regulars in London is the Euston Tap. Obviously, for me, it's outside Euston. You guys go from King Cross, but the Euston Tap is the second, and it is because it's in those Doric kind of entrance things to the old Euston station. And there's no real, well, you can't really, I don't think you can sit down in the bottom bar. There's a weird little mezzanine floor and then some seating outside. And then just for comparison, and I think the Harp came in about 8th or 9th, and me and Bruce wondered whether the Harp, which is just off Covent Garden, and as you can see there, it is a very, very slim, a great pub actually, the Harp. Again, often a bit too full, but I think it is a Fuller's pub, but they are committed to having a range of beer, so it's not just Fuller's beers in there. So that's that one.
Yeah, well, I've been in the Dove. The Dove is the one just top side of Hammersmith Bridge, which is a Fuller's pub, right in the river, and that's got the smallest bar, i.e., a room. It's a little front room, and I've actually been in there. But in terms of the smallest pub, we're going back to the Barrel and Cask or whatever it was called.
Barrel and Cask. No,
so no, I've been there. We covered the Dove about 2 months ago. Last time I went down to London. Not last time I went down. Time I went down before.
Well, your next one to find out is the Rake in Borough Market, and that claims to be the capital's smallest single pub. So the Rake in.
But that probably won't. If it's in Borough Market, it won't be a pub. Well, it'll be a unit probably, and it'll be you'll sit within the market itself. So they'll say, well, it's not actually a pub at all.
Okay, then another just catch up really, and we have talked about this a couple of times. The union sets that the wonderful Carlsberg Marston company, or Carlsberg as it shall now be called going forward, I understand. We said that obviously one had gone off to Bakewell and was being used by Thornbridge, and I think they're on their second beer now. I've not actually got hold of any yet. So they did a Jaipur the first time round. I think they've done more of a bitter second time round. But we also mentioned that a brewery, which I'd not heard of before, called Epochal, have got a unit as well. So they've had one transferred all the way up to, I think they're somewhere Edinburgh outskirts, no, Glasgow. And these guys specialise in fermented beers. So they're very much specialists, fermenting in wood and lots of open ferment as well, like our Yorkshire Squares that we talked a little bit about last week. So again, maybe worth looking out for some of their beers. Interesting that they're going to use. Interesting thing how they're going to use that union setup there. It doesn't look as big as the Thornbridge one. I think it's only like three of the casks in the kind of bottom part of it. So we'll look out for that as well. So into our beery news, and as always, Wetherspoons comes up in every episode. So again, interesting really, because Welsh they are saying that their numbers are their actual finances are not doing too bad actually, in that they climbed by 5.8%. In fact, that was the thing I was going to say. Wetherspoons were advertising, weren't they, on Saturday, that they were actually going to turn the volume up on all the pubs that do have tellies, which they're not supposed to have tellies, but quite a lot do. They were actually going to turn the volume up, which they never know. Well, they've never done that before, I don't think, which is interesting. And I guess that again is to make sure that people are going to go there and watch. So they reckon they're 7% up on the year. However, they've also just announced that they're closing 61 pubs. And I know this has been kind of off and on. As soon as they open a new one, they then close some down. So they've listed them all now. I think there was a lot of it was kind of not sure. Actually, looking at the list, I think I've only been to one, which is the one in Todmorden. I think I've been to, and I didn't recognise going to. And I don't know if you guys been to the one in Doncaster. And I think Bruce, you mess with one of the Chesterfield ones there.
Chesterfield. I also went to the Percy Shaw in Halifax, which was a modern one. But I have to say, it was a very clean, modern building. It was built into a unit that had a view cinema and just on the edge of the city centre. I'm surprised it closed because I'll tell you what, the day we went, we couldn't get a table in there. But it wasn't particularly big for a Wetherspoons, and of course they need the volume, don't they? I'm also quite
plus.
The one at St Ives is closing. I mean, the one at St Ives.
You've answered your own question there, Bruce. A lot of these are closing because the leases are up, and he'll be doing it because he won't want to renew the lease for the land. Obviously, he likes to buy his old buildings. So the one you're talking about, it being part of the cinema, he won't own the building, and he's probably basically said, right, I want to negotiate my lease. The owners of the building have turned around and given him a price, and he said, no, I'm not paying it, and that's why he said, I'm pulling it. So a lot of these are closing, but often as well because he's got more than one in Halifax, hasn't he? You know, same as in Doncaster. He's tended to be closing them down where he's got 2 or 3. I mean, in Chesterfield, he's got at least 2, hasn't he?
Yeah, well, he's got one left now. They bookended the marketplace.
Right.
It seemed insane, really. But I mean, you can't believe the pub in St Ives. I mean, imagine that one in summer in St Ives. It must be absolutely. You can't get through any pub door in St Ives. And rather than pay some of the Cornish prices, you think, well, you've got to Wetherspoons and pay their price. I find it astonishing. That's closing.
But if he's been leasing the building, then you never know. You know, the lease may have come up and he's not prepared to pay what the landlords want off him, thinking, it's a guaranteed he'll carry on.
I mean, the one in Fraserburgh did.
And he'll probably look for other premises in St Ives.
So it closed loads of the pubs down. It was also a hotel. And obviously, I mean, up in Fraserburgh, miles from anywhere, they said it was absolutely packed. I mean, I know someone's been to that one. But again, he had 2 in Durham. One of them's gone. Of course, the one that's left in Durham's huge now, isn't it? So I think
he had 3 in Durham, didn't he?
Did he have 3? I know there's that one in that new with that boat.
Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason when
down by the river. Yeah.
When you look at where they are, they're all over. They're London, they're in the northeast and the northwest. They're all over, really. I think again, it goes back to, as we discussed in that episode, you know, he's fairly ruthless. You know, he's a businessman. There's not a lot of nostalgia. Whilst he looks after lots of heritage buildings, I think you're right. When the bottom line doesn't work, he gets rid. Because I mean, he's obviously spent a lot of money on all these, hasn't he? You know, they do a lot of refurbishment when they take them over, and they regularly upgrade them. They don't. I mean,
what you'll probably find is the vast majority of those pubs there are either not historic buildings, or if they are, he doesn't own them. Because I know the last time the tranche in London, when he lost 2 or 3 in London, Moon Underwater and the Old Bank, that's because another pub chain came in and obviously offered the landlords more than he was prepared to pay. So, as I say, he'll tend to get rid of those buildings that hasn't been invested heavily in terms of the infrastructure and the bricks and mortar.
Anyway, the picture of it is outside the Reginald Mitchell in Stoke, so that's all good. I don't know if you can come across this one. When we went to Stockport, we were a little bit rushed for time because we'd had a few beers in Manchester beforehand. But as you walk into Stockport, as you walk towards kind of the market square and the market hall, there's quite a nice little street called the Underbank, which kind of runs off. In fact, the brewery.
We looked down on it, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah, the brewery's at the
we
end
looked down on it. Yeah.
And this week it's all been closed up. It looks It looks a fantastic street. And I think when we've seen it, there were lots of people sat out where they're having a drink. In fact, you can see the bridge. If you're on YouTube, the bottom right hand side there, that bridge there is at the high street, and the brewery is at the far end, is the south end of this street. Well, it's been closed off because they're making a Netflix series about the Guinness dynasty. So that's been filmed there. But actually, a bit disappointing. Actually, when I actually looked at what was down there, it looked kind of wow, fantastic place. There are a couple of pubs. There's one called
there's only two pubs.
Yeah, the Cracked Actor Bar, which I think had another sister bar as well, and that is that's a kind of a casky bar. Doesn't do any hand pump beer. And John Patton, the owner, is a former actor, hence the name. And then there's also right under that bridge, which we hadn't recognised, there's a Sam Smith's pub, the Queen's Head, which was before that called Turner's Vaults, and dates back to 1790 and is one of Stockport's oldest pubs. And apparently is the typical little 4-room, lovely little snug, 5 o'clock. But guess what? It's currently closed because they can't get anybody to run it. So a real shame. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting. So it's a biopic, about the Guinness family following the death of founder Benjamin Guinness. It's by the Peaky Blinders creator. No release date yet, so that'll be worth looking out for perhaps in the future.
Well, they'll no doubt be using the Robinsons Brewery as well.
Yeah. But I'm sure
they're not operating out there anymore, are they?
I think they're currently moving out of it still. Yeah.
So
I mean, you would have thought surely there's some streets in Dublin that still look like Dublin in the 18th century. You'd have to come all the way to Stockport. Anyway, there we go. If it's good for Stockport and the surroundings. And then, of course, the other big news, which we have kind of really talked quite a lot about really for the last few weeks and last month or so, is really not surprisingly, and it was interesting how this was done really, So there was a big announcement, I think it started last week, that Carlsberg, Marstons were put a bid in for Britvic, and that after a bit of toing and froing, that actually went through. But at the same time, they also then said, oh, and by the way, we bought out Marston's stake in the CMBC, the Carlsberg Marstons Limited, and Marstons going forward are going to be a pub company and not involved with brewing. So it looks like the final straw, doesn't it, in the whole saga of Burton Union and Bass and the whole everything else, and Marstons, the last real brewery that kind of hanging on in there, in Burton on Trent. So
the pub estate, the pub estate are millions of pounds in the red, aren't they?
Well, they've got the funding.
It won't be now because
Marstons estate are millions and millions of pounds in debt.
They just had 26 million pounds given to them by Carlsberg.
Well,
so that'll put it right off.
Isn't it astonishing that the brewery was only worth £206 million, yet Britvic they paid 3.3 billion? What a sign of the times that is.
Yeah, but that's because they're Pepsi. But they're Pepsi, aren't they? Britvic are Pepsi as well. So I know
they bottle for Pepsi.
Yeah, they've
agreed,
main partner.
But they've agreed to waive a big penalty fee of Pepsi, which allowed the deal to go through. Yeah.
Yeah. So Robinson's, Tango, Fruit Shoot, J2O, Naco Libre are all the Britvic brands. So anyway, as we kind of guessed that was going to happen. So and again, I know there's a lot of people up in arms, jumping down. I mean, nothing's going to change, is it? Because they're not going to. Nobody's going to come in with £206 million to buy the brewery back off Carlsberg, are they? So anyway, we will watch that one. And then last one, Bruce. I thought I'll put this one in for you. Don't know if you saw this. This is Craft Union pubs have. I know it's just in Yorkshire. They're Yorkshire pubs, but that's how it was marketed. That a Yorkshire pub group, the Craft Union, are now for £5. You can have unlimited crisps. So as many crisps as you can. In a 90-minute window, all for £5. I think we could get through, especially these days, the bloody bags are so small. I reckon we'd get through a couple of boxes in an hour and a half. You'd get through quite a few.
There was a spot in Hull open, wasn't it? And it was like a buffet.
Crisp buffet, yeah. There's quite a few around. Yeah.
And that was, but they've closed now because obviously they found either they couldn't afford it or it wasn't popular. So they've actually recently closed up. But you went in there and sat down, and you could have a crisp buffet, as many crisps as you wanted to eat.
Yeah. Okay, now beer highlights a little bit short this thing. I think Bruce has been busy working. So Nick, I think you're the only person who's really been out. I think I'm not really been out this weekend because I was on taxi duties, and then last weekend
I've been working.
But... last weekend was Stone Food Festival, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah,
actually, was a bit disappointed. I'm going to be honest, but we'll come to that in a minute. So,
I Yorkshire Show have some good alcoholic experiences, I'd say. Yeah.
So, Nick, I think last time you just mentioned that you'd done an epic walk from Scarborough, I think, to Robin Hood's Bay, and then you'd got yourself into Whitby, and you've had a couple of trips to Whitby. So, I think you've given us the Whitby Brewery updates, and they've had a new brewery, haven't they? And a slight titivation, have they, to the main brewing building, new bar. Is it any better than the last one, which is that in a corridor?
No, I'm not seeing the new bar. No, they're working in where the toilets used to be.
Right.
So they had some porta cabin loos outside. I always wondered how they got away with those toilets because basically they were like temporary porta cabins inside that building. And the fact that building then adjoined the brewery, it was always a bit weird. But so I've not seen the finished product because, to say, the last couple of times I've not come in on the top of the cliff there. I've come in from different directions. So today I started at Gothland and got a quick pint in the Beck Hole that fortunately is closed on a Tuesday and closed on another day, but it's open on a Monday.
It's closed on Saturdays.
So, there we are.
Famously closed on Saturdays, which is very weird, isn't it?
All right.
Yeah, that's because of all the bloody nutters drinking, weren't they?
Pissheads again, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's a bit like the West Yorkshire Ale Trail now, isn't it? They reckon sometimes you get 60, 70 people all piling in half cut because there's a supposedly walk that you do. So I had a pint of what they call it. They call it Beck Water, which is especially made for the pub by the Three Brothers Brewery. And as you can see there, it actually looks darker on the photograph than it is. It's meant to reflect the colour of the beck that runs alongside the pub there, which is always quite dark in peat. Today, I expect to see Augustus Gloop there because it was very, very chocolatey brown today with the rain that we've had, and also the ironstone workings there as well. I went past a little tributary, a little stream coming at the side, and it was amazing that the water is still rusty. You know, it's so red because of the ironstone still left in the ground, even though I say there was a massive ironstone operation there, pulling iron out of the ground from about 1860 to 1864. So yeah, I set it off at Gothland via Gromont, and then ended up back in Whitby. So when I got into Whitby, I went across the river off the old bridge into the Fleece. The Fleece is a quite nice place to sit because they've got an outside terrace in the back there. Had a pint of Whitby IPA, and then came back to Wetherspoons and had a pint of Black Sheep. Monday Club. So normally looking at $3.20 for a pint of real ale in Wetherspoons in the one in Whitby any day of the week, but it was down to, I think I paid about £2.40 for it, so not bad at all, really.
And then on your previous haunch, you'd been to you called the Black Horse, which is in the Old Town. Although we think Tex is no longer with us, unfortunately, because Tex was a bit of the Whitby cowboy who had his own seat in the Black Horse. And again, that's a very nice little, back to our theme from last time. That's got a lounge and a bar, and the bar's at the front, which is quite small, isn't it? And often a little bit secretive to get in the bar, and they normally shoo you into the lounge. And then you'd also be in the waiting room, which I think is ticking over, isn't it? Again, that's got quite strange hours. Again, it's not often open during the day. It opens about 4 o'clock in the afternoon for about 4 hours, and shuts early as well.
Most amusing thing with the waiting room is that they lock the toilets because it's called the waiting room. It's right in the station, and once again, there isn't actually any public toilets on the railway station, which seems quite incredulous. Really, it's not just for North Yorkshire Moors Railway, but the fact that it's also it's an operational railway station, obviously, because you jump on there and go up to Middlesbrough and places like that. So it's obvious that a lot of people go in there trying to use the toilets. They actually have a lock and key. Well, obviously they have a lock on the door, and you have to go behind the bar for the key. But even with the few people that are in there, you tend to get an older clientele in there with it being really ill, and there's a constant column of people walking up to the bar, getting the key, going to the toilet, locking up, and by the time they've come out, lock the door again, put the key back behind the bar, there's somebody else in the bar who wants to go to the toilet again. But I've found beer o'clock in Whitby as well, which is what I call upon the old high street, which is, I always say, like Whitby's in 2 tiers. You've got the bottom high street, and then you've got the high street on top there. So the last couple of times I've been in beer o'clock, and it's steady away in there. But once again, like to go in there and support it. Surprising it's not busier because we're just about into holiday season now. But I suppose I mean Whitby sort of, middle to late afternoonish, sort of between 3 and 5 o'clock. So I suppose that can be a quiet time.
Yeah,
but certainly have a worth looking in there.
But there's a bit of danger, isn't there, I think, now? I mean, okay, so if you're thinking about it, we've been to all the pubs around there. You've got the bottom of that hill, you've got the waiting room. So they've got a really good beer thing. You've got the, what's one of the corners, really good Guinness next to the fish and chip shop.
Oh, yeah.
That's quite a golden line.
Golden Line, because it's called, or is it Red Line? Anyway, I know that was the name of the hill, and then they were going to change the name of the pub.
Yeah.
And so you can't change the name of the pub because that's what the hill's named after. But like you said, they've turned it into some sort of like Irish themed bar now. I don't know theme, but
and then you've got the Little Angel, which is kind of just up from Beer O'Clock, which we went into a couple of years ago, Nick, and never been in there before. And again, it was a bit rough and ready. However, it had a good range of
beers, but subterranean though, wasn't
it? Yeah.
I just seem to remember that there didn't appear to be any windows in it.
And then
it was like almost like being in a underground garage.
And then a bit further up, you've got the Arch and Abbey, which again is a cracking little pub, which is similar to Beer O'Clock, really. A former shop that's normally has 3 beers on, and then a couple of bottles and some kegs and stuff on as well. So yes, all interesting. Right. So the other bit, well, let's just catch up on your last bit, which again, you mentioned these in our last edition, but I thought it would just be useful just to give a bit more background to our listeners and viewers. So we've talked about the brewery. So you'd been to Oswestry, or just out on the border of Wales and Shropshire, and you mentioned a couple of breweries that you'd been to. So the first one was the Stonehouse Brewery, which is betwixt Cambrian Railway, isn't it? Fairly well. I thought it was fairly new. I looked it up, and apparently they were established back in 2007. So they've been there quite a while, actually. And it looks a bit of a modern setup. Nick. Kind of nice beer house, and then a nice little tap next door to it as well. They do their own ciders, apparently.
Yeah,
And gin and
the
vodka.
actual bar bit is you wouldn't know that you're in a nutritional building. I think that's probably the house where the owners live. So it is a bit born of a utility building at the back, but yeah, for a tap, it's a nice setup. Once again, it was very, very quiet. I think we were the only people in there. And as I say, when the railway's running for rail bus, steam bus as well, you know, if you can get yourself to Oz Street, you can catch the train down to where the tap is. So that would be really good. And they've got a good outside area as well. So once again, I suppose we were hitting it sort of like mid-afternoon time. And thinking about it, yeah, it would be a fair old walk out of the town to get to it. So perhaps they suffer a little bit in terms of their location. But hey, if you're keen enough, you'll find out. And I say certainly when the railway's running, be handy for that. Like, I mean, it's not a long way from the centre of town by rail, but to walk, you're probably looking at a good half an hour, 40 minutes, I would have thought, unless there is a shortcut following the railway line down. But we sort of drove there and stopped in there. So that was yeah, the Stone, it was called Stonehouse Brewery.
Yeah, and distillery. So apparently they also do gin and vodka. And apparently they're just this year launching their first whiskey, Sweeney Mountain.
Yeah.
I think
I was talking to the girl behind the bar. She was a student when she just graduated. So I think she worked there a while, but she wasn't that knowledgeable. So when I asked her about the whiskey, I said, have you been selling it beforehand? And I explained to her that whiskey can only be called whiskey after it's been laid down for 3 years. And then it actually gets its character origin from the barrels that it's in. So you can sell it, but you can't call it whiskey. So like they did at Filey, or like World Top did, they called it Yorkshire Spirit for the first 2.5 years. And then into the third year, once it'd been laid down for 3 years, they could then call it whiskey, which is their Filey beer now. So didn't want to be like a beer or a whiskey nerd, but hopefully I gave a little bit of information and she can pass it on to other people. So I think she did offer me to try some, but I said, no, I'm all right at the moment. I'll stick on the beer.
Sweeney Mountain, and apparently they've got a partnership with a Speyside Cooperage, and they're using bourbon casks to mature their whiskey. Family run, so say it looks like a family farm, doesn't it? It's kind of based on what probably was a farm. They do their own cider, 22 barrel plant, 4 regular beers, Cambrian Gold, a station bitter. I think that's what you had, Nick. I think a 3.9% bitter, and a Sunlander again is their other popular beer. So that was one hospitality, and then you also had a trip to the seaside, somewhere I've been. Unfortunately, when I was in Barmouth, the Myrddins Tap and Brewery wasn't actually open because they'd gone away on holiday. But you managed to get in there. So this is Myrddins Brewery and Distillery. There's a bit of theme here, distillery. Again, they are a husband and wife team, set up in 2014. Darian and Janet Ashton. And I think you mentioned last time, Myrddin is you said dragon or Merlin. Merlin is kind of linked to
Welsh Merlin.
And the white and red dragon, and there's a big story on their website about what it's all about. Because this it sits on Barmouth High Street, but actually the view is towards Cadair Idris, which is a bit like the little kind of second to Snowdon and very nice. It's just on its own in Cadair Idris. It's not like surrounded by much of the mountains, like what they call it now, Erie. They call Snowdon now, don't they, in Welsh? So you got in there. Local pub of the year. Again, I think they do their own cider. They do some interesting things like pina colada ciders and cherries and berry ciders. I think they have 12 core beers. And the actual brewery apparently is now not here. It's actually an industrial unit other side of Barmouth.
Yeah. So. Well, they have a sign on the door saying if we're not here, it's because we're visiting the brewery. Because literally it is run by those two. And I say when we were there, Mrs. Brewery Lady was behind the bar, and then her husband popped in for a little while as well, ticking over nicely. Because obviously Barmouth, first time I've ever been, you know, it's a nice holiday resort actually. And in fact, only since coming back, I was reading something up the other day. You know, I've gone about my ceramic bars before. The fact that it's only 13 of them in the country, of which 2 are in Hull. And then there's also obviously one that we might be going to see tomorrow, Bruce, in Preston, the Black Horse.
Yeah.
They've just refurbished a spot in Barmouth, and it's called something like Peggy Ann's or something like
Fanny's Mouse, yeah.
Right. And in fact, they've just installed a ceramic bar in there.
Yeah.
So it's a new ceramic bar, but it's of the old traditional style. And I wish I'd known because I would have gone to see it. So it's not 13 ceramic bars in Britain now, it's supposedly 14 because they've got a brand new ceramic bar. Yeah. So
Didn't
they've
actually
gone
go
to
in
that
there.
sort of expense, that sort of
It's
money.
very upmarket, I would say. We walked past it quite a few times when we were there, and I hear good reports about it, but it just looked a bit posh. So actually, we ended up in the Royal Hotel, which is the further end. In fact, there is a pub across the road from the tap, which was okay. They had the Purple Moose beers in there, and they were quite good. But then the other one, yeah, the Royal Hotel is a proper eccentric, big old hotel bar, but had again 4 or 5 really decent beers on, and was absolutely rammed every time we're in there. So worth a little trip there. So that's our brewery tasters, gents. We're going to take a break. That's part 1 done, and we'll come back and we'll look at part 2. And I'm going to tell you about 2 breweries that I didn't visit last week, although I have been to both breweries. But I sat and listened to their brewers talk about what they were doing, and it was a tale of 2 brewers, shall we say? Yeah, well, I'll tell a little bit about the lack of beer as well that were there. Anyway, we'll take a break and then we'll come back and we'll start again.
See you soon.